Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I got to say this Mets fans, they love Pete Alonso. And you know what? How could you blame Mets fans? How could you blame us? How? Pete Alonso could go down as one of the best all time Mets hitters. And in fact, he's not far behind in many of the major prolific categories. In the last 5 years, Pete Alonso has the most home runs in Major League Baseball. So the guy has a special gift that not many people in Major League Baseball have, especially nowadays. Nowadays, it's not like 20, 25 years ago when everybody and their mother was hitting 30, 40, 50 bombs. But you got a guy who can do that on a regular basis. Now, there are many, many issues with Pete Alonso that David Stearns and the Mets organization have to weigh going forward. But this year is going to be the year of Pete Alonso, and there's going to be no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Spring training just started, and the biggest focus seems to be what is going on with Pete Alonso. Does Pete want to sign? Does he want to negotiate now? Does he rather go to free agency? Is David Stearns willing to negotiate now? And that, rightfully so, is the biggest topic. I mean, I know that's the biggest thing I'm focusing on. I see Pete went into camp. The guy looks like he's in good shape. It looks like he's ready to rock and roll and have a mammoth year. So we're going to get into Pete Alonso. I'm going to kind of break down what was said and what is the meaning of what Pete Alonso is saying. I really want to get into that. So first, as always, I appreciate all the comments, all the positive feedbacks. You guys are the greatest. So please stick around, like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff. I can't thank you enough. I really can't. We're rocking and rolling, and opening day is not far at all. Okay, so Pete Alonso said he said a couple significant, really things during the press conference, and we have to address. So right out of the box, it was asked to Pete Alonso, "What do you feel? Do you want to be a lifelong Met?" So Pete responds and he says, "I definitely have envisioned myself of being a lifelong Met," Alonso said, "and I love New York. It's really a special place for me, my family. I've definitely thought about the idea. I definitely welcome the idea, but I can't predict the future." So obviously, he doesn't want to give up any leverage. Obviously, he doesn't want to show his hand. At the end of the day, Pete wants to sign a very lucrative contract. Now, here's where I kind of like think back to what happened to the Mets and what the organization has gone through in the last couple of years. Now, they have signed a couple big mercenaries in Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. And I think that has, in a way, affected the culture. That has affected the culture in a way where, hey, you know what? I got to go out and get mine. You see these guys, Scherzer and Verlander, get mammoth deals, $40+ million. And at the end of the day, they were doing what was best for them. Did they really care about the team? I mean, those two guys took up like a third of the payroll. It was really almost ridiculous if you think about it. And the production that they put out was just measly. So, Pete Alonso seeing that, probably thinking, hey, you know what? I got to put my family first. I want to make the most money as humanly possible. Okay, so in that specific quote, he didn't really give like an inclination where he was really leaning, but I kind of fear that based on the culture in the past, that he's going to want the biggest dollar value. And I guess why not? Why not? He's 29 years old. He's only going to have this opportunity once. He went out to get an agent, a mega agent like Scott Boras, and he did that. He was asked about that. They said, "Why did you go out to get an agent like Scott Boras?" And he basically said, "I want to do the best that I can for me and my family." So he basically equated getting a guy like Scott Boras as doing the best he can for his family. And we all know what that means. That means he wants the most money. Okay. And you know what? Unfortunately for us Mets fans, if the Mets don't value him where Boras and Pete think he should get, it doesn't look like at the end of the day there might be a possibility that he goes elsewhere. Okay, so Alonso's comments came less than a week after Mets president of operations David Stern said that free agency probably is the most likely outcome for Mr. Alonso. So David Stearns, that's the game right now. He doesn't really intend on engaging conversations. And I've been really like pondering this. And in negotiation, why wouldn't David Stearns say, Pete, here's $250 million for 8 years. You'll be making 30 plus million. You'll be the highest paid first baseman in the game. You'll be taken care of for the rest of your life. Here's a mega contract. Sign on the dotted line. Well, we know because he has an agent like Scott Boras wants to negotiate with 30 teams. That's number one. Number two, if David Stearns lays out an offer of $250 million, what does that become? That automatically becomes the bottom number. That becomes the least amount of number that Scott Boras and Pete Alonso would take. When they negotiate with other teams, they'll be like, oh, you got to do better than 250. The Mets already offered 250. We turned that down. So that automatically what it becomes, a bottom offer. Or not a bottom offer, the starting offer, the starting bid. So what David Stearns and Steve Cohen want to do is they want to see how Pete Alonso's market develops. Just like this year, you see Bellinger, you see all the other free agents like Snell and Montgomery. They are still on the free agent market, and their market hasn't developed in a way that Boras had believed. So if you project that for next year, maybe something similar happens to Pete. We don't know. But here's something to think about. Here's something to focus on. And I know us Mets fans, we do have a love affair with Pete. We hold him near and dear to our hearts. And because he's a homegrown guy and he's doing something that we've really never seen a Mets hitter do on a consistent basis. Really. So I can understand why he's so near and dear to the Mets fans. And I love him as well. But the thing is, my ultimate goal is to put the best team now and in the future, right? And if Pete Alonso doesn't want to be with the team, if that's not his number one priority, and we don't know that, we have to prepare for all those scenarios. Now, you also have to keep in mind, we're thinking that if we sign Pete, he's going to hit 40 home runs for the next 5, 6, 7 years. That is what is our thinking. That is what, if we sign him, that is what we intend him to do. But that's not always the case. I mean, you see in recent history, guys like Chris Bryant, Trevor Story. I mean, guys that were in the Francisco Lindor, those shortstops like Carlos Correa, guys who were supposed to have an upward trajectory, their careers have just come to a halt. Other guys like Miguel Cabrera and Albert Pujols, legendary players, after age 30, 31, their careers have basically curtailed in a horrible way. I mean, did they go and fall off the map? No, but their numbers have basically been way lower than their career averages. So that's something to really keep in mind. If you sign Pete, you're going to pay him a lot of money, but you have to really bank on his production being there for the duration of his contract. And it's something that the Mets have to really project. I mean, you don't have, I say Pete looks healthier this year. He looks like he's physically fit, but when we're ready to win in 3-4 years, is he still going to be able to produce at that high level? And that amount of money that you're going to give him, $30+ million, are we going to get value back? All right, so that's what we have to weigh. Other guys that I've heard, hey, you know what? A guy like Adam Dunn. Tell me, and Adam Dunn's a very nice player. He's a guy who has power just like Pete, but I've heard in circles, hey, he's like an Adam Dunn. He's an Adam Dunn. And Adam Dunn's, no slouch. He's a guy who was a high on base guy. In fact, Adam Dunn was prolific at getting on base, much better than Pete. And he was a guy who could, hit 40 home runs in a drop of the hat every single year. He hit 462 home runs. I mean, he's really a guy that you can kind of compare to Pete. Dunn played till his age 34 season. He had 462 career home runs. I mean, it really seems like, that's not an out of the world comparison. I mean, if you say, hey, what does Pete do that's so much better than Adam Dunn? I mean, it's hard for me to find. Adam Dunn's career average is 237. Pete's a bit higher. I believe it's like 250 something. It got affected by last year. But, that's an interesting conversation. We value Pete, and I think Mets fans and Pete has to recognize this as well. If he signs with the Mets, we're gonna love him no matter what. We're gonna love him no matter what. If he goes to another team and he craps the bed, they're not gonna give him that support. They're not gonna give him that leeway. Now, I personally think that Pete is a lot better than an Adam Dunn. I think that we have not even seen the best of Pete. I really don't. And I think that we could have a situation where, with the DH now in the National League that was never in there. So we could really take advantage of having a guy like Pete. And even if he does get older and he does age, you can always slot him in the DH 4 or 5 years down the road if he can't play first base all the time. Um, so that is always an option. And like I said, Pete last year hit 46 home runs in a very down year. I believe he hit like 215. His average was just terrible. Going into June, he was on track to hit over 60 home runs, but he got hit by a pitch. I believe Charlie Morton hit him in the hand. And that's another thing. Pete was hit the most times out of any hitter last year. He was hit 21 times. We got to start having our best players back. We do. From the pitching staff to the hitters, and that's really got to change. Now, going back to the press conference, there's a couple other things that I think really stood out. So let's get to a couple key quotes right here. Now, I think it's very important for us to all have a level headed mind and to approach this with practicality and to not look at the past, but look to the future. Now, I mean, there's a bunch of guys that we all projected to be kind of lifelong Mets, have productive careers, but it doesn't always happen that way. I mean, I'll give you a couple examples. There's 5 free agents right now that you would have think that would have been signed and not sitting on the free agent list. Like, and I don't get this. Tommy Pham had a great season last year. He's still a free agent right now. As far as this video is being recorded, Noah Syndergaard, he's a guy who the Mets, projected high things for him. He's still on the free agent list. Aaron Loop, he had a phenomenal season 2 or 3 years ago for the Mets. He's on the free agent list. Dominic Smith, the second coming, he's on the free agent list. Ahmad Rosario, he's on the free agent list. So there's a bunch of guys with I'll say halfway decent talent, but guys who came up and were a part of the Mets organization at some point of their career, and Mets fans saw the talent that these guys had. But you got to see what the market dictates. And that's the special thing about the MLB free agent market and the actual tricky thing with Scott Boras. As we see, we're really paying attention this year to how his clients will eventually, if they cash in or not. I'm waiting to see. Does Jordan Montgomery get that $150 million contract? Will Blake Snell have to give in to $150 million? I mean, he was looking to well over $200 million. And the other guys, Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman's an interesting case. Platinum glove third baseman. Got a decent amount of pop, low average guy, but he hits the ball as hard as anybody in MLB, and he has the best glove in MLB, especially at third base. So I mean, it's interesting to see where these guys are going to end up. And at the beginning of the year, a free agent. I think the thing is, a lot of these teams were afraid of really Scott Boras. Like, oh, I'd be interested in Chapman if he was going to take between 15 and 20 million. But if he's going to ask 25 to 30 million over 6 or 7 years, it's ridiculous. Same thing with Snell. A lot of teams are like, okay, it's fine. You guys, they got talent, but they're not good enough for us to mortgage the future. I'd rather save the money this year and go after free agents next year that have higher upside and that I'd rather invest my money in. Steve Cohen and David Stern don't want to tie up money in bad players. They already have a guy like Starling Marte making $20 million for the next couple of years, and his productivity has really dropped off. I mean, we signed him for a 4-year contract, $80 million or $78 million, somewhere around that, and essentially, it's quite possible that he's only going to be productive for 1 year. I was just thinking about this the other day. Three things David Stearns could do that actually automatically prove that he's a better GM than in the past is, number one, if he could find a trade partner for a guy like Starling Marte, somehow get him off our books, that would just be phenomenal for me. It was just phenomenal. Number two, like, we have to get rid of, like, really all this dead weight. And I know a lot of the dead weight just has to fall off. But if you really think about something that's amazing, everybody was talking about how high our payroll was last year. We were like around 350, 360, 370, depending on where you look. Spot Track, Fangraph, they have at different amounts, but it was around 350, 360. If you take off the amount we owed Robbie Cano, let's just say we were giving about $345 million to active players. So our payroll was close to $350 million. This year, our payroll still, I think it's tops in MLB. We're around 320 million. But if you deduct $70 million to players who have no impact on the Mets, like Scherzer and Verlander, McCann, they're on other team, our active payroll this year is $250 million. If you deduct Marte because he's going to be injured, you figure he's not going to have much of a role this year, our active payroll is around 230 million. So, I mean, it's a far cry from last year when we had 350 million and we were, paying all these high supposed value guys. It just didn't work out. But you could just see the change in strategy. So that's another accomplishment. If Stearns could get our payroll shed of all these crappy players and well under all these tax thresholds and still be a good winning ball club, that's number two. That would show that he's a lot better GM than we thought he would. Number three, if he starts all these free agents that he signed, like these, Jorge Lopez and G-Man Choi, these guys that we think have little value. People are saying, let's just say a G-Man Choi or Jorge Lopez or one of these no-name guys, Joey Wendell, all of a sudden has an all-star season. They're 1-year contract guys. You just trade them and you flip them at the deadline. Maybe you can get a prospect or two. That's another way of building your farm system. You get guys that don't have much value. You build up their value and you trade them for young prospects. That would show me that this guy knows what he's doing. He is wheeling and dealing. So those would be three things. Shed dead weight. Guys like Marte, get him off the team. I don't know what you have to do, but hey, if the guy's talented, he can do it. Get the payroll situation to a manageable, get under the tax penalty threshold. And number three, like I said, if you could start flipping these guys, acquiring some talented prospects, that would be an accomplishment. It really would. But at the end of the day, the story of Pete Alonso is going to be the entire year. It is going to be the entire year of Pete Alonso. Mets fans, like I said, we have a love affair with Pete Alonso. We simply do. We don't want to see him go. He is, so to speak, I don't want to say it, but he's almost like our Babe Ruth. It might be kind of like, just quote Stephen A., a blasphemous thing to say, but in our organization, that is how we value Pete Alonso. So, you know what? We're going to leave it right there. If you could like and subscribe, I can't say thank you enough. I will talk to you very soon, and we'll keep you updated. Have a great day.